In the air, a California condor exemplifies grace. They soar on air currents invisible to our eye. They exploit a dimension of the world that is beyond our mechanically unaided reach. Foraging and raising young condors, though, ties condors to the terrestrial world. And even along the wildest parts of the California coastline, condor survival is highly influenced by people. Last summer, we witnessed how human-caused fire affects these birds. In late August, the Dolan fire swept through the Ventada Wildlife Society's condor sanctuary. While some wild condors didn't survive, in the aftermath, we also found examples of condor resilience in the face of great challenge. This is Mike Fitz, your resident naturalist with Explore.org, the world's largest live nature cam network. My guest today is Joe Burnett, a senior wildlife biologist for the Ventada Wildlife Society and the Big Sur Condor Recovery Program coordinator. Joe has worked on condor recovery for decades and is here to explore the saga of Iniko, the young chick who we watched on the condor cams this year and whose nest site was burned in the Dolan fire, as well as the saga of her parents, Kingpin and Redwood Queen. 2020 has not been a normal year in many ways, and it was no exception for these birds. Joe, thanks so much for joining me once again. Good to speak with you.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Mike. Always love coming on Explore.org. Yeah, and look forward to talking about Iniko.
And when we last spoke, Iniko had not been hatched. The egg hadn't even been laid yet. I think that was back in January. We talked a lot about what to expect on the condor cams, throughout the year. And we talked a lot about the hierarchy within the flock and the behavior of the birds, trying to preview maybe what people would see during 2020. And a lot of that did come to fruition in the Redwood nest cam. We did see an egg laid by Redwood Queen, and that was incubated, by the pair, Redwood Queen and Kingpin. Iniko did hatch in late April. And just to recap her early life, can you briefly describe, her growth and maturation during her several month-long nestling phase?
Yeah, it was, it's always a roller coaster ride with nesting, and you guys see it on, the other Explore cams as well. You hope for the best, but you never know really what's going to unfold. And so even from the start, from the hatch, you just hope Iniko hatched. And so this was the first view of Iniko. And she was just at this point could fit in the palm of my hand. Just probably, I think, less than a week old in this in this video. And already starting to move around. It was really exciting. This is the first step in our in nesting where we kind of do a sigh of relief. Okay, the egg hatched. So this was a huge step. And then, of course, I tell everybody, I go, you will watch her grow. She will grow literally every day. You will see little Iniko become a full-grown condor, and it was no doubt about it. Like this shot here of one of the parents feeding Iniko's who's growing appetite, and it was really awesome to watch her grow. I mean, everyone got to witness this pretty magical development. I mean, there's no other way to put it. This hasn't been witnessed on this level with this level of detail ever. So it was really as eye-opening for us as it was for everyone else. And I kept, I always reiterate that in our talks. This is a great clip of why these cams are so amazing. And this is a great example of this, catching this hummingbird, the smallest bird on the planet, interacting with the Iniko, one of the largest. So it was, again, the magic of these cameras can't be understated. And to be able to watch a Iniko develop just firsthand like this was just incredible.
And during that process of her growth in the redwood tree, prior to late August, especially, did you have any need or did you have any worries about her progress and growth?
Yeah, we had very little concerns. Everything was going right to plan. I mean, you couldn't script it any better. Mom and Dad were were feeding her around the clock. They were keeping a nice close eye on her. Her development was going great. Yeah, we really had no hiccups along the way that we were concerned about. And so, yeah, up until the fire, things were looking. We were right on track, right on course. We couldn't believe how well things were going.
And of course, things changed for this young bird very quickly in mid-August, and really for many of the birds in the Big Sur condor flock. The Dolan fire started on August 18, about 4 miles from the condor sanctuary. So, and it burned, through the Ventana Mountains and much of the surrounding region. Uh, the fire was human caused. It burned the Condor Sanctuary, which we're looking at some of the footage of that wildfire approaching the Condor Sanctuary right there. It burned the sanctuary and 4 condor nests between August 20 and August 24. It destroyed your release pen and research facility, and in total, it burned about 125,000 acres. 11 condors after the fire were missing, and I think presumed dead, and that includes 9 free-flying condors and 2 nestlings. So, Joe, as someone who's dedicated, decades of your life toward condor conservation, what was going on in your mind as you watched the fire burn, towards the sanctuary and that redwood nest?
Yeah, there's nothing that prepares you for a wildfire. We went through one in 2008, and we had that one was a little more. We actually had to rescue some condors in that fire. And that was a lightning strike, and that was a little more. We had a little more time to deal with. This being human caused, and it crept up on us very quickly. It was very close. It started incredibly close to our site, as the way the condor flies, and this made it even more difficult to process just what was happening. But the to have the fire start when it did, right in the middle of nesting, with everything going so well, I couldn't help but get a sunken feeling in my stomach of what was to come. We know this area burns, and this footage really captures it. Again, this was not something we were anticipating, but to have the camera there during this final moment before it basically burned the cable and cut off connection, was it was my heart was sinking, because I really felt like Iniko wasn't going to make it. I really didn't. You always like to be optimistic, but when nature and a wildfire come bearing down, it's usually wildfires have a way of doing what they do. So we were optimistic that the nest was in a redwood. We know redwoods are fire resistant, but it was also just the smoke and all the other aspects of wildfires that can kill wildlife. We just knew it was a pretty not looking very good for Iniko and some of our other nests. And just the intensity of the fire, that we were seeing even on the cams, was just indicated to us that things were this fire was burning at another level, and that it was definitely going to leave a path of devastation wherever it went. So yeah, it was not looking good, that's for sure.
It was, amazing to me, sitting on the other side of the continent, watching this live on the cameras. So yeah, I was thinking about everybody in California at the time who's experiencing the effects of the smoke and in these fires, and of course the wildlife impacted by them. In the aftermath, though, it seemed like you got to work right away trying to assess the situation, assess the damage that the fire caused, and also assess the status of the flock. So, what did you have to do to try to locate the birds, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, that was probably the most difficult part. Was we were limited on what we could do based on the fire activity. Obviously, even after these areas burned, they were very dangerous to enter. These fires keep burning. The main head of the fire will go through, but the area still burns for almost, the areas we were trying to get into burn for almost a week. And so for human safety, we just couldn't risk sending any of our crew, myself or any of the crew in there, you know, you wouldn't want to fall into a burning stump hole. There's really bad things that can happen. So we were looking to the fire, the fire service to inform us when it was safe to go into these areas. So personally, I would have loved to have gotten in earlier to find out to get in there to find out what was happening, but we did have to exercise some patience and just put our safety first. And we were able to get in there sooner than I thought, within a couple weeks. And then we started doing the head counts. We started to try to get to the nest sites. Did we see them? And this was our view. That awesome day we hiked up, finally got access to Iniko's nest and hiked up. And I remember coming up over this bluff where we can get a first view of the nest, and there she was, just hunkered away in the nest. I could not believe she had survived, especially with such high drama, with the camera capturing her up to her, we thought were her last moments. And so to see her still alive was just, it was a great uplift, with everything that had happened, knowing we had lost the other 9, likely had lost the other 9. We knew these 9 weren't showing up. It was still early. We were still actively searching for them, but it was looking pretty grim from the start for those 9. And then we knew the other nest sites were in more areas where the fire burned very intense. One of the nests was right near where the fire started, and that area was just incinerated. There was nothing left. And then another nest tree had a lot of fuel under it, a lot of fuel load, and that chick also perished. So it was a nice, uplifting moment to set our eyes on Iniko. And again, it just showed you what resilient, strong birds they are. And at the same time, we were concerned. We're like, well, she might not be out of the clear. She could be hiding injuries that we can't see yet from smoke exposure. And it wasn't shortly after that we were watching. Her behavior wasn't quite what it was before. She wasn't interacting with mom as she wasn't as perky as she was before. And so we definitely were concerned for Iniko after the fire. And so we were able to get the explore.org cam on the outside. That was a priority, to get that cam going so we could monitor around the clock. And fortunately, you guys moved into place really quickly, like you always do. And we were able to get that camera going outside the nest really quickly. And it was a really high quality camera, which gave us really nice views in the nest. And I can't say enough what an important tool that was. And later on, finding out, that Iniko was getting attacked by this older male. So, this camera was really instrumental in helping us monitor and keep an eye on Iniko.
And one of Iniko's parents didn't survive the fire, at least not that we know of. Kingpin, presumably died in the fire. He was the oldest bird in the flock, 23 years old, I think I read. So along with his longtime mate, Redwood Queen, they formed the most productive and experienced condor pair in the Big Sur flock. That's one thing that we talked about quite a bit in January during our live chat. So on the Condor nest cam, we got to see Kingpin act like, or behave like what appeared to me as a condor behavior novice, really, a non-expert. It seemed like he was a very doting and responsible father. He was also very experienced. He knew the terrain well. So I was a bit surprised to learn that he didn't survive the fire. I tend to think of condors as masters of soaring, but it also seems like it takes a lot for them to get in the air. They need a lot of runway, so to speak. So how might a fire, particularly a fire burning at night, pose a risk to a bird like Kingpin?
Yeah, so like Kingpin and the rest of the flock, at night is when they're the most vulnerable. And the thing with any, being perched up in a tree, you're pretty safe from everything but a fire. And what we found happened we think what happened in our canyon was there was just a level of randomness to the way the fire burned. And even experienced birds like Kingpin, if you happen to be in the wrong spot that night, there's not a whole lot you can do. Flying at night is almost certainly your last option if you're a condor, just because obviously they're not like owls. They can't see at night. Their vision just isn't wired that way or geared that way. So they're going to be really reluctant to move. They might hop to another tree, but I think once this fire was upon them, it was probably too late at that point. And I think it just came down to the randomness of whether your stand of trees burned or didn't. And we know there were 25 plus condors in that area that night, in the area where Kingpin was. So we think the losses could have been greater. So in a way, it's not losing birds like Kingpin and the others wasn't ideal. It was, if there was a silver lining, it was that we didn't lose all 25, or 28. I'm sorry, there was 28 that we had on the Explore Cam that day that we're fairly sure roosted in the area. And so for me, 167, I think everyone fell in love with him. He was such a great, he's just a really unique condor dad. He just, like you said, he dotes on all of his chicks. He's just a really attentive father. He never really leaves the area. He's very, he'll go out and feed, but he's right back. Whereas Redwood Queen would take bigger trips to go find food and be away from the nest for longer periods. Kingpin was always around, and we know that as biologists. Anytime we came to check on Iniko on foot, 167 was in the area watch. He saw us way before we saw him, and so going up after the fire when I first saw Iniko and I didn't see him, I knew it wasn't good. And you like to think, oh, maybe he's holding up somewhere, but as a biologist, I thought, where else would he be? This is the most important place to him. It has been for the last 6 months. Where else would he go? If anything, this is where he would come to die. So it's like it was not a good sign for me. My gut told me that we had likely lost Kingpin, and yeah, it was shocking. I mean, it's such an experienced bird, but it goes to show you at night, no matter how much experience you have, and firefighters will even tell you that it's just these wildfires are on another level, and you really are up. It's really, it's not a matter of how smart you are or where you it's just the wildfires dictate what happens. And unfortunately, he got caught, and he and some other really experienced birds, but I released 167 back in 1997, and I had a special connection to that guy, no doubt. So it was a tough loss, and as a scientist, we're trained to keep our distance from our animals, but from our study, the animals we're studying. But I mean, how do you not get attached to a bird you've known over 20 years? It's like in my extended family. So it was really, that was one of the tougher losses I've had to experience on this project, and I hope I don't have to experience many more. These birds should live into their 40s and 50s. So to lose a bird like Kingpin in his prime, and not only that, the leader of our flock, this bird that had kind of set the pace for the flock, had kind of really set the mark very high, for the other birds. So to lose a leader like that was, not only a setback for us, but we saw it as a setback for the flock. But again, one bird, and now presents an opportunity for potentially a younger male. So or even another male that wants to move up. So it's there's always a silver lining there, and knowing how resilient condors are, we know they will rebuild, within their structure, their social structure, and come back just as strong.
And one of the, I guess, silver linings of the fire is that the mom, Redwood Queen, survived. I was wondering, though, how the fire maybe affected her as well. That her nesting territory was transformed into a very different place, literally overnight. So how might that have affected her ability to maybe orient to the landscape and adjust? And how did she adjust to that new habitat?
Yeah, there were, I mean, the whole area, even where the Condor Sanctuary is and where her nest is, you're right, it was just transformed. I mean, I barely recognized it. And I can't imagine condors, who are creatures of habit, they use certain trees to roost. They have safe spots they like to go to at night, that were gone. So, they definitely, the foundation of everything they do is rattled. Their foundations were definitely a little less stable. And I think the biggest thing for her, I felt her biggest curveball that she got was showing up and not having Kingpin there. They function as a pair, so they kind of feed off each other, and obviously the males have a certain role and the females respond to it. I think she was as surprised as we were as where is Kingpin? Kind of this, my mate is always here and he's nowhere to be found. And and obviously she's not connecting the dots that, oh, maybe it was the fire. She's just, I think to watch her struggle with that, just kind of this, seeing that part of her get rattled wasn't, that was probably the least, that was rough to watch, as a biologist, to see her just kind of, and she was trying to figure out what to do. I think she kind of fed off him in terms of how they dealt with Iniko, and now all of a sudden she's a single parent and she's got to figure it out fast because she's got a chick that needs to eat. So it was, yeah, it was difficult to watch that process, but then at the same time, she totally stepped up, and it took her a little while to come around, but it quickly set in that she was going to have to do this on her own. And again, just showing how resilient and how I think it really spoke to their behavior and their, I can't put it into words sometimes. I just admired her effort so much and just being able to adapt to that really rough situation, just all around, and to stay true to what she had to do, which was help Iniko and raise her chick. So, high marks for 190 for Redwood Queen.
It was amazing to see what she persevered through to get her chick to a fledgling age. When the fire struck, Iniko was, kind of approaching that age where it was getting to about time where we would expect a Condor chick to leave and nest. So, after the Dolan fire, many of us breathed a sigh of relief when you determined that Iniko survived, and we were watching eagerly for her to fledge. But then she faced another unexpected challenge. So can you describe the series of events that led to Iniko having to leave the nest unexpectedly?
Yeah, life in the wild is unexpected, and knowing the hierarchy structure of condors, and what unfolded, it wasn't completely shocking, but it was, after all that had happened, it definitely wasn't what anyone wanted to see. But what we were seeing, I believe, unfold is a young male seeing an opportunity. I think when Kingpin's presence was no longer there, these young males were able to come in and out of this territory unimpeded. And they quickly saw that as an opportunity. And, you see it with other animal species. I know it's with grizzly bears, and have been known to, when they move into a territory and take over, they will sometimes get rid of the young or even kill the young. And so we think a part of that was happening here. A male was seeing an opportunity to take over a prized territory held by a very high-ranking male, and we believe he was that was a chick unrelated to him, and he was obviously getting rid of anything left behind by 167. So, as harsh as it sounds, it's pretty common in the animal world. When you take over a territory, you kind of clean house, and we think that might have been what was happening. And again, it when Kingpin's presence stopped, you realize the work he was putting in to protect that territory, probably on a daily basis, keeping birds at bay, and for such a dominant presence to leave, it was open season in a way for some of these younger males to not only come in, but to come in and start to try to claim that territory. So what he was actually trying to do, a lot of this is speculative. I mean, we haven't ever seen this before firsthand like this. It's such high level of detail, but I think it was in a general sense, that's what was going on. And then, of course, when Iniko fledged early, because of the attack by Ninja, when Iniko went to the ground, and actually once she was on the ground, he continued to attack. That's when we knew that the writing was on the wall at that point, that things weren't looking good for Iniko, and that an evacuation was critical at this point. So we also noticed that Iniko had developed a fall from. So it was we were hoping Iniko. Yeah, it was unfortunate it had pre-fledged, but we were hoping that Iniko would have gotten up to a tree right away. Redwood Queen would have protected Iniko, and they would have stayed the course with life in the wild. But when Iniko had suffered that limp and the injury that we didn't, this unknown injury, and was not getting off the ground, and now it was vulnerable to any predator, not only to Ninja, but to any animal that, a mountain lion or anything that came along could have had, taken advantage of Iniko. So we saw the opportunity to evacuate Iniko, and we worked with our partners, with Fish and Wildlife Service, with LA Zoo, and everyone agreed that was the best option. And so that's what unfolded, and we were able to capture some of the footage of this. And again, this is not something we take lightly. This is a really rugged area that is just burned. Just the stress of handling and hiking this Iniko out could cause more damage than good. So we have to be really incredibly careful and calculated about how we do this. Anytime you take a bird out of the wild like this, so we try to give them the best chance they can, but then it hits a certain point, and we have to make that decision. And we were glad we did. We were able to get Iniko safely to Los Angeles Zoo, and it was I can't commend my field crew enough for what they did that day. And if it's hard to put into words what I asked of them to do. It was a big ask, and they stepped up and really shined in that moment for Iniko. So, and then the story doesn't stop there. We got Iniko down to LA Zoo, and we didn't know, is she okay? What's her condition? So LA Zoo has a state-of-the-art veterinarian facility, not only for the animals in the zoo, but for but for condors. They are the experts in treating condors. So we were taking Iniko to the best spot on planet Earth to get treated, and she was in good hands from the start. Unfortunately, the radiographs they did right away showed there were no serious injuries to her legs, that the limp was probably a muscle bruise or a leg bruise. And since then, the limp has gone away, and then she had some other minor stuff that was easily treatable, and she is doing great. Here's a shot. So she went under some observation. She was under observation for a few days, but she started to make the turn, and they released her into one of their they call them pre-release pens. So she will be in a pen with other birds her age that are on track to get released next year. So there's a very good chance she will get released down there at San Simeon with another group of pre-release birds. And since she's been in there, she's been a little more to herself, from what I hear from the staff at LA Zoo. But she's starting to warm up to some of the other birds, and I think that probably has a lot to do with the trauma she went through. She's probably, that was a series of events that I don't know too many condors have been through that much and survived. And so I think it's understandable that she's a little standoffish at this point, but everything else, she's got a clean bill of health, and we're looking forward to getting her out. And God, it'll be this time next year, so less than a year, we'll have her back up. So I'm anxiously awaiting that. I know all the folks that followed the whole saga of Iniko are very excited. So we all look forward to that day. And I think we made the best out of a crazy run of events. And again, I think without explore.org and the cameras, Iniko we would have never been able to do what we do. So I can't thank Explore enough for allowing us to share this with the world, and also allowing us to have this great tool of monitoring the birds.
And I do have a follow-up question on Iniko and her stay down in the Los Angeles Zoo. And this kind of goes maybe looking ahead to her release. After fledging, young condors stay with their parents for another year often. Iniko will be, or I should say, has been introduced to other captive condors. But how might the lack of a parental guide and guardian affect, her behavior in the wild? Or is there even a need to worry about that? Many condors have been raised in captivity and go on to lead successful lives as wild birds. So I was just kind of curious about that dynamic.
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely get that question in regards to Iniko, and will she have, nothing's better than mom and dad, right? Mom and dad showing you every step of the way. But what's awesome is the zoos have perfected, this method which has helped save the species of preparing captive reared birds for the wild. And we work closely with them. And the pen that you saw in that photo earlier where Iniko is residing now is a huge aviary, and she's in there not only with birds her age, but there's also, we call them mentor birds, and they're older birds that will help. Because what we found is if you have a bunch of young birds in a pen without guidance, it turns into kind of a Lord of the Flies kind of
Oh, really?
behavioral, it blows up. So we like to have these mentors. They're basically like foster mom and dads in there to kind of keep the peace and to keep these birds socially socially in line. Really, it's to keep them in tune with that hierarchy that is going to determine their success out in the wild. So the more familiar they are with their place in that hierarchy when they go out, that's probably the most important thing that Iniko will learn and these other pre-release birds is not only where their place is in the hierarchy, but building that confidence up. You don't want a bird so dominated that it's has zero confidence and it's afraid to move. You want them to be able to navigate within that, and these mentors are really great at not only enforcing the rules, but giving these birds leeway and letting them learn how to navigate and basically speak the language of condors, and being able to get out there and socialize with other birds. So, and I spoke to it earlier today, is just that really that social behavior is probably as, if not more important as the physical development. It's just, it kind of goes hand in hand. The condors and the zoos have really done a great job at mimicking that in captivity, and that's really saved the species in terms of allowing us to release these birds without their parents at these ages when they naturally would wean off from their parents, which is right around 18 months. So yeah, it's been a learning process for sure. The early years of releases, we learned that we had to kind of evolve to this point. And but yeah, working with folks like at LA Zoo who are really keen on condor behavior has been a real treat, and can't thank them enough for everything they contribute, and all our partners. Yeah, so Iniko's journey's not done. She is definitely on the path to return to the wild, which is, for us, at the end of the day, that's the most important. She will contribute to the flock, and we're all curious to see that first time she reconnects with Redwood Queen out in the wild. What will that be like? I'm as curious as you. I would assume they're going to recognize each other. But at that time, 190 might be raising another chick and might not have as much time for Iniko. But honestly, Iniko will be developmentally. That's a time she would be going independent anyway and finding her own way, and she'll be making her own bonds with birds and potentially finding her new mate. And that's really that's what's going to keep the flock going. And yeah, it's going to be cool to see them back out together in the wild again. Reunited with her mom, and yeah, we're all looking forward to that day.
And certainly, so many of those things you touched on they've been, or my mind has really opened up to the possibilities of what condors are capable of. But prior to watching the cams and speaking with you, I didn't think of condors as social birds. Like, I maybe thought of them more as like something like a golden eagle that would kind of live as a mated pair for a certain period of time while they're raising their young, and then kind of just doing their thing for much of the rest of the year. We see that, with ospreys too. Once they migrate away from their nesting site, they're not really kind of hanging out together. So condors really do have a different social structure than a lot of the other birds that I've had the opportunity to watch, and the amount of work that goes into raising their offspring, and the amount of work to protecting their nesting territories, which you touched on in earlier in the conversation too. I mean, all of those things are really just kind of amazing aspects of their lives, and I really do look forward to seeing more of this into the future as we continue to watch the condors on the cameras. Joe, it's been a really great conversation with you today. I do have one final question for you. Before I get to that, though, I just want to plug a couple of websites. If anybody does want to learn more about condors and the work that the Ventana Wildlife Society does with them, please go to their website. It's full of a lot of great information on condors, and especially the individual birds. Great profiles on the birds you can read there. Just go to ventanaws.org. And then tomorrow, Joe, you're doing a Zoom update as well. What are you going to talk about? Where can people find more info to sign up?
Yeah, so they can go to our website to sign up right on the main page. Yeah, and it's our monthly Zoom chat. We've been doing these once a month, and it's to give an update on Iniko, on the rebuild. We're also going to speak this year. The San Simeon 7 were named by local Native American tribes. We're going to have a representative on that Zoom as well. So we're excited to do that. She's actually going to also show some Native American artwork. So it's going to be a really great Zoom. Yeah, and again, I'll have updates. Again, we got a pretty good update today on Iniko, but there's always new stuff, and then just on the flock in general. So yeah, tune in. It should be good.
And of course, if you want to watch condors, you can always go to explore.org/condors. And with the Ventana Wildlife Society, we recently launched a new condor cam, the San Simeon condor cam. What can we look forward to seeing on that camera?
Yeah, we're hoping to see a release tomorrow. That's the anticipated event. Weather has been a challenge the last couple days, but fortunately, this system that just came through looks like it's going to clear out this afternoon, and the forecast tomorrow looks really good. So we're hoping to get a few of these birds out tomorrow, and fingers crossed. But yeah, that cam is where you'll check it out, and then I'll be also doing a live Zoom along, kind of doing a play-by-play as we let them out. And yeah, we're all excited to see it. It's not something we've been able to do, and it kind of came together last minute, and working with you guys and Ranch Wi-Fi. So really cool, especially with this year with the fires, and to focus on some of these more positive, this rebuild and releasing birds is really great. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks so much for joining me today, Joe. It's a great conversation as always.
Thank you for having me. Great talking to you guys.